Story 1. I do not bother much with that. I'm slowly chipping away at my dreams. The bigger problem is that focusing on my financial security means I am sacrificing my dating life. I'm currently harshly reminded of the fact that dedicating my weekends to work means I do not have time, energy, or money to date anyone. Most of the time I have accepted that I will remain single, but I am still human, and I can get lonely as well. Right now I am feeling lonely. Story 2. I'm dealing with it badly. I already lost everything once. Scrambled my way out of homelessness. Found my way into a dead-end job I can barely do with my lack of work experience and education. I've racked up debt trying to live alone while everything gets more expensive. Instead of some determined never-again attitude, I have grown numb to the fact that I am probably just not going to be able to make even a basic survival income for much longer, and any single catastrophe would ruin my life instantly. There's no happy ending or safe place. It's just a matter of time before the house of cards collapses. I'm available for children's birthday parties, weddings, and bar mitzvahs. Just a laugh riot. Story 3. One day at a time. I live in Argentina, and things have been difficult since before I was born. Even with a good-paying job, I still face challenges. Other people might give up and become pessimistic. But I have something inside me that makes me determined, even if everything is going wrong and my body is failing me. Even if I am on the edge of madness, how dare you assume I'll quit just because there's no hope? I do what needs to be done because it has to be done. Life is uncertain, and things still need to be accomplished, with or without hope, dreams, and inspiration. Because at the end of the day, every effort I put in, even if it seems for nothing, was still worth it, and I'll laugh. Story 4. It was tough at first, but nowadays, I realize that I can live a very comfortable life even with my frugal spending habits. If you are a single guy with no kids, it is not too hard to get by. It is hard to create a budget that will make you rich, but it is not hard to create a budget that will keep you from being poor. Story 5. Honestly, changing jobs frequently and recommending close friends and family do the same can be beneficial. Doing the same job, and even sometimes with less responsibility, can sometimes double your salary, which is crazy. Companies don't care about your loyalty, and you just don't get valued enough to stay. Story 6. I'm just living one day at a time, brother. If I start to break down things and really think about what I won't be able to afford in the future, I'll drive myself mad. I'm thankful for where I am now. Sure, it could be better, but it could be worse too. The best way I try to live is just a day at a time. Story 7. My grandparents didn't have credit cards. When they ran out of money, they simply didn't eat. Apparently, this happened quite often, though usually only for a day at a time. They walked 2 miles to the nearest store with a child's wagon to get groceries, because they certainly didn't have a car. Their whole life plan was interrupted by World War II. My grandfather was drafted. My grandfather's brother died after losing a fight with a tractor. My grandmother's brother died because cars didn't have collapsible steering columns, so the steering column caved in his chest. After finding success later on, my grandfather bought an extravagant gift for his mother, a dishwasher. Our pictures of their lives are far more rosy than reality. Did I mention my grandfather was a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics doctor of philosophy? Story 8. I am doing better than them actually. Dad lost the house, spending all the money on drugs and pills. Grandpa disappeared when my dad was born. I have a 3-bedroom apartment, a car in my own name paid off, and I have a decent amount in my savings. Story 9. I have formulated a plan to move to a far more remote but beautiful part of my country where I may have a chance of buying a house. There are a lot of unknowns, but as long as I can find stable work, I might pull it off. My father worked hard in his 20s, well, his whole life, and started his family early. It wouldn't have been easy, so he is a stand-up person, really. It turns out I'm not very financially literate, and I have a lot of hard work in front of me. We all make our choices. Story 10. Probably in the most irrational way possible, I learned survival skills and have a tent and place to go. I can go into the wilderness where I have planned and be fine. Story 11. Oh, I'm not trying to live in this world like the baby boomers did, because this is not the same world that the baby boomers came up in. We can't compare our lives to our parents because nothing is the same as it was when our parents were our age. You need to adjust your expectations and start living within your means, and you can have a good life. Story 12. Well, comparing goes all ways. Are you also feeling happy because medicine is much better now? I would start with eliminating your imaginary baseline of a random era. That is an interesting metric, but not one to tie your own life to. Never compare things and make decisions since they are always relative. Then you keep eliminating risks. Any risk, small or big, make it go away if you can. Approaching it this way comes with inherent priority sorting. Sorting risks is easier and more accurate than, say, sorting your goals or needs. Example: how long can I sustain if I lost my job today? That is an important risk for everyone. Once you identify your risks, either mitigate or eliminate where possible. Over time, as you start doing better, your mitigations will last longer and risks grow smaller. And suddenly you realize it has been a while since you felt anxious. Story 13. Great question. First, limit exposure to nonsense. Cut the cord to your cable bill. Limit screen time in general. Look up news rather than being fed the news. Limit social media. Second, eliminate debt. All bad debt has to go. Some debts are fine, but try to own your cars and limit credit cards. One for emergencies is ideal. There are very simple ways to get out of debt, and you'll learn them once you're serious about doing so. Third, let go of the idea of comfort and stability. Instead, focus on self-preservation. Take on new responsibilities. Learn and practice skills. Spend the time you used to spend on passive activities on active learning. Learn to weld, garden, raise livestock, do woodworking, learn a second language, etc. Transition your interests from watching others live to a goal-oriented life of your own. The last step changes depending on the person, but in every scenario, it comes back to one thing: having confidence in yourself. Knowing that you are capable of survival and that you can and will do what you must. That you will adapt. That you will change and grow. Some of us will grow our minds, some our bodies, some even our relationships. Regardless of how you choose to rely on yourself for comfort and peace of mind, you can take these steps and begin to separate your own future from your perceived future of everyone as a whole. You must get to the point where you no longer look at your job as a single source of stability. You must be able to look to yourself for comfort, to be so sure of yourself and your situation that you no longer look at things the way you do today. The world is full of distractions. Until those are muted, the household funds are in check, and a mind becomes healthy. You cannot see all the paths available to you. You can do everything those before you did. In fact, once you get started, the goals you see as obtainable now soon grow to show you paths to those you view as unobtainable. Just remember that striving to be uncomfortable will go against everything this world tells you leads to a happy life, and it will test you. Give up the idea of a pain-free life. The biggest harm we do to ourselves is convincing ourselves that pain is optional. Pain is essential. Story 14. I don't feel that sense of dread. In terms of income, I make more than my father ever did on paper. If we adjust for inflation then versus now, I'm not competitive yet. If we look at his annual income for each year, I was often making less per year than him, then eventually caught up to him and have now eclipsed him. During my father's peak earning years, he was married to his first wife. They had a big fancy house, a few horses. If his ex-wife didn't feel like doing laundry, she'd take my siblings out and buy them new clothes for the week. He earned a lot, and no matter what he did, she spent it faster than he could make it. Eventually, he divorced her, and between alimony and child support, my first memories of life are when we lived on a campground. Then, in a really poor apartment, us moving in the middle of the night because we got evicted, and so on. Eventually, things got better, then he got hurt. So we lived in a nice house, but we were broke all the time. Before he could find a new way to make more money, he got sick, then died. Adjusted for inflation, I haven't passed him yet. But eventually, I will. In the meantime, I live very modestly and I make a decent income. I have a much greater sense of financial security than he ever did and the potential to make things even better. Story 15. My dad went bankrupt and left my mom to raise 2 boys when I was a kid. I'm now stable with a home, a mortgage, and all my bills paid on time. I'm happy as Larry. Story 16. I go into meltdown mode every couple of months. It's just unbelievable. It doesn't really matter whether you have a better paid job or not. Whatever you earn is not even enough to have a normal life. And I describe normal as simply having a safe place to call home, let alone going out or owning anything. Just that. Story 17. I can afford more than they did, so I'm good. Just take some time to build up your career. That instant gratification thing is a pain these days. Story 18. The only thing I can think of that's less affordable is housing. My grandfather and father couldn't afford beef for the table. Thankfully, we had space to raise chickens and pigs and grow beans. My wife's dad had a donkey as a primary mode of transportation in 1970. Granted, that was in Mexico. It was a deadly sin in my house to make a 2-minute long-distance call on the one phone line shared by about 5 households. Our TV, which got 2 channels well and 3 if you turned the antenna just right, cost my old man at least a week of work. Point being, it's never been all milk and honey for young people. I'm only 57, and at age 29, I was living in a 2-room apartment without air conditioning while working 40 hours a week on night shifts in a factory, then cutting firewood on the weekends to keep my car on the road, and to be honest, to buy beer, play softball, and date. Story 19. I know a lot are saying something along the lines of do not care or do not think about it. And that used to be my approach. I think it is important to not let yourself get overwhelmed. However, I found making a budget sheet has helped immensely with impulsivity or reckless behavior. Hold yourself accountable and set limits. Figure out what is draining your finances or what is a priority. I grew up in a poor home that felt scarcity every day. We could not even afford milk. It was not until I got married and talked to my wife about it that I realized this drove a lot of unhealthy habits. I overindulged in food and, when younger, substances. This drained a significant portion of my bank account. Having prioritized our budget and staying accountable, I have gone from getting by to having extra cash to invest and save and attain long-term goals. Yes, it is different from previous generations, but the most constructive thing to do is to work within your means. If you advocate for how you currently live, then great. If you want to change something, it will take effort. And no, I am not pretending there can be gaps or obstacles. You just need to really determine what you can do. If it takes 10 years to get a house, at least you eventually get it instead of forever wishing you could get one. Edit, get a budget sheet. An accountant friend of mine showed this trick to me, and it worked wonders on setting monthly and annual goals and limits on spending. Get all of the bills and payments listed, and then be dead honest about your free money spending on stuff you want but do not need. You should have some fun, but it needs to be set to a certain amount so you can then have a monthly leftover amount for savings, even if it is $50, $100, or whatever. Something invested and kept locked away helps. Story 20. No kids. My wife and I both agree that this world is headed downhill and will probably be unlivable for future generations, so why would we want to willingly and knowingly force a person into that kind of world? It helps with expenses, and it helps knowing we do not have to stress about their future. I think the ultimate way to deal with it soon will be actually dealing with it instead of just not thinking about it. Story 21. We can afford things that they couldn't. How many of our dads spent thousands on a 60-inch projection flat-screen TV when now we can get that same TV on garbage cleanup week for free? Story 22. I constantly obsess over it. It's not even about luxury things like a boat or a lake house or whatever. It's that my wife went on maternity leave for 3 months and we're now $6,000 in credit card debt. And I made $70,000 last year. I'm just trying to pay my mortgage and feed my kids. My dad supported 4 kids, put us in Christian school, took us on vacations, bought a camper, paid cash for slightly used cars, and lived in the suburbs just on his salary. I remember as a teenager being amazed when the grocery bill approached $200 each week for our family of 6. But they handled it, gave to the church, and saved for retirement. Now my grocery bill is almost that for a family of 4, with a toddler and a baby. What's that going to look like when they're 12? How can I have another kid? I want a big family, but I can't keep up unless my wife works too. But then what's the point of a big family if no one can enjoy it? I'm afraid to leave our home near the Great Lakes because other places are having water crises. I'm afraid to move south where my wife has family because of regressive politics. I just want to support my family. I want my kids to be stable. Anyway, my kid is done with breakfast, so I guess I'm done ranting. But it's just so frustrating. The future is scary. Story 23. I just know I need a better job. I have a good degree but could not find a job, so I ended up elsewhere. I just legitimately cannot afford to stay on my own. I still manage to stay positive about it, though. Story 24. I spend money on shiny things I can afford. I have accepted that as a single man, unless I want to live in a single-bedroom dirty rotten hole in a block of flats, I will never afford my own home. I have cleared almost all my debt. I don't care about travel, all the places I want to go are mega expensive, and flash cars don't interest me because of speed limits and speed cameras. Status symbols mean nothing, so it's not too bad really.